Warning: this podcast may contain graphic and triggering content. Please listen at your own risk. Each individual struggle is different, and everyone's recovery and healing journey is different. Please reach out to a certified medical professional if you need help. Welcome to episode 18 of Stomp the Stigma, the podcast aimed to fight the stigma surrounding mental health through education, awareness, experiences, stories, resources, and the vulnerable truth. Joining me to Stomp the Stigma today is Ashley Blythe. She works for the Phoenix Homes program in Regina, Saskatchewan, and she works to house homeless individuals without any housing readiness requirements. So she tries to get them back on their feet and helps them reintegrate back into society. So today's episode is all about homelessness and mental health. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It is so nice to meet you.
You too.
First of all, I want to thank you for joining me, coming on my podcast and being open to talking about what you do. And I think it's so important and I'm super interested. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I was pretty excited when Tony was like, hey, my friend has a podcast and you should maybe see if you can join. And I was like, yes.
Yeah, this
That's
is
amazing.
So awesome. So you work for Phoenix Homes. Is that what it's called? Yes, in Regina, which is so cool. Can you explain, I guess, what it is and what you do?
Okay, yeah. So Phoenix Homes, it stands for Housing and Other Case Management and Engagement Services. But what we are is a Housing First program. So Housing First means that we have no readiness requirements like many programs, require maybe sobriety or adherence to some mental health, seeing a psychiatrist or taking their medications. We don't have any of that. If you're homeless, you qualify.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the basis behind that is that everybody deserves a home no matter what. And a lot of the times, once you get into stable housing, things just go up from there, right? Like nothing is worse than not having somewhere safe to call home.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. It's like there is so much to the job, honestly.
Yeah.
So Housing First in Regina, we're actually connected to a lot of different programs that also do housing, but we're the only Housing First program in Regina. So that means that people do assessments when they're homeless. They go through what's called our centralized housing intake program. Mm-hmm. And based off of the domains, we kind of score people, and whoever has the highest score would be placed with a Housing First program, which is us. So we deal with the hardest to house people, the one that have, physical health, mental health, addiction issues, legal issues, basically all around people who are just really struggling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite things that my manager just told me the other day was people can only get better once joining our program.
Aww.
Yeah, so I am a case manager, an intensive case manager for that. So that means that I have a caseload of currently 8 clients, and we do everything, honestly. We will house them. That's the initial. We house them, we get them on assistance, and then we set up everything. We help them liaise with landlords. If they need any psychiatrists or doctor's appointments, we set them up with those. If they have any legal issues, we connect them with legal aid. We attend court with them. A lot of people, honestly, I've had a couple clients that have never really been housed, so we teach them, just basic maintenance of houses, daily living things, cooking, cleaning, stuff like that. We help grocery shop for them. A lot of them, we do trusteeship, which is budgeting for them. And then we also do a lot of harm reduction. So we do their medication management. We also help them with methadone if they're on the methadone program. And we do what's called a managed alcohol program. So that means that if somebody is strong in their alcohol addiction and quitting is not something they're interested in or could harm them, and they're using things like non-beverage, like mouthwash or hand sanitizer, we try and put them on the managed alcohol program if they're interested, which means that we give them, we visit 3 times a day and give them a set amount of drinks so that they're only using beverage alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a harm reduction approach, which to a lot of people it seems very not okay, because it's like, what, you're giving people alcohol? But these are people who would die. Like, they would have seizures or withdrawal symptoms that are just so severe they would end up in the hospital without it. So that's why we run the managed alcohol program. And it's also, we take them to a doctor, we check their blood work out, we make sure that they're not, at risk either when they get their alcohol. So it's a really good job. You have to be good at a lot of different areas.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But it's also very rewarding. Like, the people I work with are just the best people you've ever met. So
yeah, I can imagine. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So that's like a little bit of the background of homes. My manager kind of saw the need and was like, you know what, I want to start this program.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a good idea. So is there like a central kind of housing, I don't know what you call that, like a complex or something? Or do you just find normal housing for people?
So we have scattered house housing. So that means that they generally live in apartments, or most of them live in houses. A lot of them, apartments are just like too close to people. They are a little loud, might have guests over that, apartment, people who share the apartment with them wouldn't like. So a lot of them do live in their own houses. And so we visit them every day. Eventually, we would like Regina to have what's called permanent supportive housing. So it's like a step above us, where it's an apartment complex for those high needs people who are struggling with homelessness, where it has like more intensive mental health support and addiction support. Just people around 24/7. We only run from 8:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night. There's a little gap in care there where sometimes people just would benefit from having someone there, at 3 in the morning to just chat with, or
absolutely,
help support them. So that would be like a great goal, or that is the goal, is to have some permanent supportive housing eventually in Regina, because some people just need the extra support.
How did you get into this?
I was taking my nursing degree, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I was placed, Phoenix Homes is part of a larger company called Phoenix Residential Society.
Okay.
And so they have a lot, like, their main focus is mental health. So they have a lot of different programs. Some are in community, some are in building where they just have their own buildings. And I was doing my placement and wasn't in the homes program actually, but was looking for part-time work afterwards. And my friend who had done her placement through homes was like, oh, I really liked it, and they're looking for part-time workers. Oh, wow. And so I kind of snuck in there as part-time, and then the case management position opened up, and I was like, you know what, I want to be here like full-time. I love this job. I love the people. And now I'm not nursing. I actually, I finished the degree, but I don't want really anything to do with the nursing part. I just want to work with people. So.
Oh, I love that. That's probably the best feeling, when you see somebody just kind of turn their life around and you get to be a part of that whole process. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. My favorite part about it is it meets people where they're at. We don't have these big expectations. We just understand that everybody deserves basic respect and support, and we want to be able to give it to them.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you what your favorite part about your job is.
Oh, there's so many. Like, my favorite memories are mostly just driving clients to appointments, but where we get to chat. I love finding out what kind of music they like to listen to, so I make sure that's on radio. And it's just, there's so much human connection in the job. Yeah. And it makes it so great to work in and for.
Well, you get to meet so many different people and hear like so many life stories and different backgrounds and things like that. Like, homeless people are stereotyped and judged so much, but like it could happen to anybody. And then you get to hear
Literally.
all about their lives. Like that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it's great. It can be very, hard emotionally because there is a lot of trauma related with addiction
Yeah, of
and
course.
homelessness. Like, they're just, most people who are struggling with addiction have some form of trauma.
Yeah.
So it's just, those are the tough areas, but like, it's also nice to see them have the support now and have the tools to be able to, work through some of that if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, before getting into nursing school, getting into working with Housing First, like I had no clue about harm reduction or any kind of Housing First. So it's really, really opened my eyes to a lot of different things that I would have never thought about if I hadn't taken this job.
Yeah. So is Phoenix Residential just in Regina, or is it elsewhere?
Yeah, it's just in Regina.
Okay.
Yeah. There are Housing First programs. Like I know there's one in Calgary. I don't know the name of it. And I believe there's one in Medicine Hat.
Oh, okay.
Medicine Hat actually has functional zero homelessness. So that means people who enter homelessness don't stay homeless for longer than a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they just they have all the supports in place so that if somebody becomes homeless, they might access a shelter and then they know where to send them to get them housed.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. That is the goal here in Regina, but
yeah, no kidding.
And one day we will reach it. It's just not quite there yet, which is okay. Yeah. I think we did. It's called a pit count, where we kind of went and surveyed in Regina to see who's struggling with homelessness, and I want to say in Regina it was like 284 people that were still struggling with homelessness.
Yeah. So do you have to go out and find these people, or do they come to you in search of housing?
In the beginning, it wasn't that we necessarily were searching them out. It's just that my manager had worked in places that were connected to people who are struggling with homelessness. And so she kind of knew some of the core people that were. And then eventually, as we've gotten bigger, we now have, we're kind of the central place to get assessed. And a lot of people do know about us, so they kind of come on their own. Or people in hospitals or incarcerated will be referred to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the homeless population is stereotyped and judged so harshly. What are some of the stigmas that you see and hear about the most? And I guess, is there one that bothers you the most about it?
I mean, a lot of it has to do with money. People think they're lazy, that they should just go get a job, that they're just leeching off the government, which is absolutely not true. If anybody's ever lived on welfare money, that is barely enough to get by. So I think that is probably one of the biggest ones. It's just that people are very concerned that taxes are going towards them. My kind of favorite thing about Housing First is that for bleeding hearts like me, you just love it already. You love the people, you just love doing it. But then, people who are concerned about the money, we did a survey about 4 years ago when we didn't have as many clients as we do. We have 32 now. And we took a look at how their services have decreased. So that's ambulance rides, going to the emergency room, going to detox, police services, stuff like that. And I want to say we surveyed 15 to 20 people, and we saved almost $2 million of taxpayers' money because they're not taking those ambulance rides. They're not using those emergency services. They're, so it's probably increased quite a bit since then.
Yeah.
But, people have to have healthcare, right? And the money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So once getting housed, I know there was one person who probably took an ambulance ride almost daily, went to the ER almost daily, stayed in detox probably nightly, And once he was housed with us, once a month, if that. Mm-hmm.
That is incredible.
So once they have a place to go.
Yeah. So at what point do you kind of stop visiting them and like kind of decide that they no longer need your help?
Well, it's all very client-centered. So there are some cases where they feel they're ready and they no longer want services. I'd say because we are housing a lot higher needs, we're not quite equipped to graduate anyone from the program, just because like a lot of those like cognitive needs are there forever. But there are a few people who have graduated, and a lot of it just comes from stability. Like once they have stable housing, it just kind of snowballs from there. We just want to make sure that like they know how to talk to a landlord, they know if they're on assistance how to get direct rent paid, if they're not on assistance, like how they're gonna pay their rent. And yeah, if they feel ready and we feel that they're ready, they can graduate from the program.
Wow. Oh, you must get so excited when you see somebody leave you.
Yeah, it's bittersweet. Like you love to see it, but also don't want them to go because you love them so much. But I mean, the nice part about us is that like if they want to come back, we kind of have that bit of an open door policy. Like, hey, if you're struggling with anything, just let us know and we'll try and help you figure it out. Because sometimes people just need just that little hand up. Not the huge supports and everything together, but just a little guidance.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So I guess you see homeless people that are unable to afford, I guess, housing because of their mental health issues or issues related to mental health. Do you think that the aspect of homelessness kind of exacerbates their mental health issues or struggles at all?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a variety of mental health issues that our clients come to us with: schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress disorder, drug-induced psychosis, bipolar disorder, hoarding disorder, panic disorders, anxiety, depression. There's a lot of that. And I would say, the lack of stability, they're not seeing doctors very frequently. A lot of them are stigmatized within the healthcare system itself. And a lot of them do turn to substance use to, try and numb the pain, and that can exacerbate a lot of mental health illnesses as well. So, yeah, it's definitely very difficult, especially if you're struggling with your mental health, to also have no home and no safety, basically.
Yeah. And do you see people that are homeless because of their mental health as well?
Yeah, I've seen, sometimes people who are struggling with high mental health don't know how to talk to their landlords, or they get themselves into some scary situations where, maybe they decide to live with a friend or an acquaintance, and that doesn't really work out, or it can become abusive. People who struggle with their mental health are very vulnerable a lot of the time. And so it's easy to take advantage of them. I know for a long time there's the stigma that like people who struggle with mental health are, violent and scary, but they are more likely to be a victim of crime than they are to actually commit crimes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so for your work, like you deal with kind of some of the darker parts of people's lives and the tragic stories and like the heart-wrenching situations. Like how do you leave that at work when you come home, and like how do you separate your work from your own life?
Sometimes I don't.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be
that is
so
a big
hard.
struggle. These are just really beautiful people that you definitely take home with you. It's hard not to think about them. I've definitely had, I attend counseling, especially with some of the harder areas of work, and I try and take a lot of self-care time with my dog. Before COVID, I went home. My family lives in Lloydminster, so I'd visit them quite frequently to kind of de-stress. But yeah, it's definitely hard to separate. Sometimes I'm okay with the lack of separation because there's clearly passion.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
behind it. But yeah, you definitely have to figure out ways to leave it at home or leave it at work, but also to know that like I very much trust the team I work with, so that if
Yeah.
I'm not there, like there are other people who are amazing at their job who are fully capable of taking care of the people we work with as well.
Right. Like you know that they're in good hands and you don't have to worry about it when you're not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is a big thing for all of us. Like we
Yeah.
get very attached to our own caseloads, but we have a really strong team of full-time and part-time staff that I just know that if I need someone to help me out, like they care just as much about the people we work as I do, and it will all be okay because we are all working towards the same goal.
Absolutely. Ah, I love that. There's nothing better than a good team. Like I've worked places where the team just doesn't jive and it is not fun. When you have to like kind of babysit your coworkers, you're like, what am I doing? This is not part of my job, but
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say sometimes all of us are super passionate, so when we have different points of views, it can get frustrating, but I wouldn't say that I'm ever like angry about it because I know that they care just as much.
yeah.
And we all just, have different life experience, different schooling experience, like we all just see things a little differently. So it's it can get quite passionate, but like at the end of the day, we all just want the best for everyone.
Of course. I feel like you'd kind of have to be pretty passionate about it to do that kind of work.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's amazing.
my parents have had to listen for years now of me just being like, "You'll never guess what."
Yeah. Does your like family or friends ever get sick of hearing about your work? Like
Oh, probably.
I feel like in some ways it's depending on the stories. Like it can be really dark and like hard for other people to handle. Do you ever get people telling you like, "Okay, I can't really handle what you're talking about?"
I wouldn't say that, no. I
No.
mean, a lot of my work I also can't really share a whole bunch about because
Right.
there's
Right.
confidentiality, and I do want to, keep my clients' privacy in mind at all times.
Yeah.
I'd say one of the bigger things about my family and friends is that, like, when the dark things are happening, sometimes it gets me pretty depressed, and they're more worried about my mental health
Right.
and safety sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody's ever told me not to talk about it. But I'm sure sometimes they're like, okay, Ashley, like we get it. You love your job.
Yeah. Anthony, you mentioned that you guys talk about your own struggles with each other, specifically anxiety.
Yes.
Are you comfortable talking about your own mental health?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Is it just anxiety that you struggle with?
I'm diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder,
Okay.
but I also have a touch of depression, which isn't quite diagnosed. But my doctor basically said, like, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember kind of like the beginning when you first realized that you had these mental health issues?
Like when it clicked that I needed help was in nursing school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it actually took me, I think I was 24 when I was actually diagnosed. And then once I was diagnosed, I was like going back through my life and I'm like, huh, yeah, a lot of that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'd say lifelong struggle with anxiety, but
Yeah.
being the shy kid.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then, yeah, I was about 24. I had severe anxiety going into my nursing placements. I couldn't feel my arms, like from the tips of my fingers up to my shoulders. I would puke. I had a racing heart. I was sweaty in the hands, like very typical physical symptoms. Lots of insomnia, lots of tears, and yeah. And then I finally was like, I think I need help.
Yeah, that's fair.
And went to a doctor, and he was not great. So I went home to Lloydminster and went to my family doctor instead. He wasn't terrible. It was more he focused on things that I didn't feel were like relevant, and then prescribed me Zoloft, which from my experience in nursing school, I was like, I don't know if that's quite the medication I need. And then went home, and my family doctor was like, well, he's not wrong, but I think you should try something else.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've been medicated ever since, and it's been a world of difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Initially, my mom was like a little worried about like taking medication because she's like, I don't want you to be dependent, or, you know,
Right.
like she's pretty worried about it. She's like, you could stop in a year, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I haven't.
Mhm.
And once I, got to that peak level of like being medicated, she's like, man, we should have medicated you earlier.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm like, I know. I would say working in the field that I do, like it can be anxiety inducing, but it also like is helpful for my anxiety. Like I have to face a lot of my fears daily.
Mhm.
And I think that's made me like a much more confident and maybe a little more internalized anxiety.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Like, do you think that your own mental health experiences have helped you understand and like relate more to the people that you help at work?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say I'd say I don't know that I've ever struggled or had as much trauma as they have,
Right.
but I can definitely empathize with them on, worrying about what people think or worrying about appointments. Yeah, I would say that sometimes when I'm talking to someone because counseling is a pretty stigmatized thing as well.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking to someone who we're discussing counseling, I always like tell them that I see a counselor so that it doesn't feel like a big, bad, scary thing and
Yeah.
that it's normalized. I wish almost everybody would see a counselor. Like they're so great.
Right? Like you don't need to have mental health issues to go to therapy or see a counselor.
Yeah, yeah. So I think those experiences, because a lot of times I am younger than a lot of my clients, and a lot of my clients are Indigenous, and I'm clearly not.
Mhm.
And they just can feel the differences. Sometimes I feel like maybe I can't empathize. So it's
Right.
always great to have areas where I can humanize myself to them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And while I will never be able to understand, half of the things that they've ever experienced in their lives, at least they know that I can empathize with them and, try and put myself in their shoes.
Do you get anxiety attacks?
I used to.
Yeah.
I don't as much anymore. Yeah, I'd get really panicky and like heart racing, can't concentrate, trouble breathing,
Yeah.
like but I've noticed that I have created a lot of coping skills for myself past my medication. Like I always say, medication isn't the cure; it's just the stepping stone to being able to like calmly figure
Yeah.
out the extra things I need in my life.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. If I'm not medicated, like everything's the end of the world. Everything's going wrong.
Yeah.
How could I ever deal with it? When I am medicated, I'm like, okay, I don't like this. I'm uncomfortable, but I can figure this out.
Mhm.
So
So,
I would say I do a lot of breathing
yeah.
these days.
Yeah. Do you meditate at all?
I do,
Yeah.
yeah, and I quite enjoy it actually.
I've
And
heard it's super helpful and like relaxing, but I've never tried it.
I've actually run a couple groups with our clients at homes to do some meditation. And so far, the people who have attended love it. Like it's very relaxing. There's a couple that don't, because there's various, ways to meditate. A few of them didn't like closing their eyes, but I found one of my counselors actually gave me, it's like Celtic knots that you just kind of circle with your finger or a pen over and over and over again. And it's the same as meditation because you're just focusing on like one thing, can't really think about anything else.
Yeah.
So I like trying that with them a lot.
Do your like every time you have kind of an anxiety attack or like a anxious like situation, are your symptoms or your like physical signs the same every time or do they change?
I would say they're pretty similar each time. Like I
Yeah.
can definitely feel like when my anxiety is beginning to get heightened past the point of like comfortability.
Mhm.
Or like my heart, like my chest feels tight and my heart races, and I definitely tingle in my hands and my feet before it kind of reaches up my arms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What is your kind of go-to method to like bring yourself back?
It really depends where I am, like what's causing it. Generally, I saw someone who kind of did a technique with me where it's like, what can I control and what can I not control?
Yeah.
And anxiety is all about wanting to control everything.
Yeah.
So I definitely do the like tally in my head, like, can I control this? Like, what can I change in this moment?
Yeah.
But if I'm at work, like, I definitely go to a coworker's office or my manager's office and just chat about it right away to try and stem a lot of that anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I always find like getting a different point of view helps because you're so in your head about it and you think everybody's just like judging you and looking at you, and really it's not. It's usually not as bad as you're making it out to be.
Well, I love how open you are about it and that you're able to talk about it with other people right away, because I think so many people just internalize it and keep it inside, or they're ashamed or embarrassed or anything, and they just don't talk to other people about it. I love that you just are able to do that right away.
Yeah. I used to be pretty nervous. Like I'd share and then I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's oversharing. Ashley, stick it back in. But I've also had a few people be like, I like how you like always just talk about it like it's just a fact of life. Like this is, this is you and you don't make anybody feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really like helped me to kind of continue just being like, yeah, I have anxiety and a little bit of depression and, lots of people do.
Yes, I love that. And I think a lot of people should start talking about it more in that same way, because like for both of us, our mental health struggles don't define who we are. Like we are so much more than that, right? Like
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey that way, but it's been great to kind of overcome those barriers and yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy for you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, I have just a couple questions that I like to ask all of my guests. I'm sure you've heard it on the podcast already. Do you have a favorite thing to do for self-care?
Oh, honestly, baths. Like if I've had a stressful day, I love a warm bath. Like I just melt in the tub.
Oh, that sounds so nice right now.
Yeah, that'd probably be my favorite. I like to just hop in the tub. Sometimes I'll bring a book, sometimes I won't, and just kind of just relax and it's helpful physically, but it's also just helpful mentally to just like feel the warmth and just kind of relax it away.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Okay, one last question for you, and then I am done. Is there a stigma or a misconception surrounding mental health that bothers you the most, or that you hear most often that isn't true? I know there's so many.
There is a lot. I think one of my biggest ones is currently with our drive to destigmatize mental health, that we kind of forget a lot of mental health in the background. Like I feel like anxiety and depression has kind of taken the forefront.
Yeah, like those are the go-to mental health issues that people talk about, but there's so many more than that that are just in the background. That is a very good point.
Yeah, especially with working with people who have schizophrenia. People are scared of people who have delusions and hallucinations, and I think we still have a long way to go to decrease the stigma. Like I'm glad that we're talking about anxiety and depression because I do think it's super prevalent in so many people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the quote unquote scary mental health is still very much stigmatized and not talked about, because it's nice to talk about our mental health that a lot of people have, but maybe not so much the bipolar disorder and schizophrenia and hoarding, stuff like that.
Yeah. I didn't realize that hoarding was kind of like a mental health issue, but it makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's also strongly linked with OCD.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think that's one of, I don't know if it's necessarily a stigma, just that I feel like there's varying levels of acceptable mental health right now.
Yes, I love
And
that.
I think we need to work to all of it being not stigmatized.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that so much. That is the goal here.
Yes.
Okay, well, that is all the questions that I had for you. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I mean, I could go on forever.
Yeah.
About homes and.
I mean, your work sounds so interesting and rewarding and just incredible. Like, I want to do this now.
Yeah, I definitely. It's one of those jobs too. Like, it just sucks you in. Like, we have so many people who become students who are like, "Yep, now we're in it," and like they want to work part time, and yeah, it is definitely rewarding.
I'm definitely gonna look into similar programs here in Calgary.
Yes,
I'm so curious.
I wish I could tell you the names off like hand, but
that's okay.
I don't quite know them. But I do know Calgary does have Housing First, which is I love Housing First. I love accepting people as they are, where they're at, you know, and knowing there's potential as well. But yeah, just loving them even in their darkest moments. So that's
my heart.
That's the best part. Yeah. No, there's so much to talk about with homes too. Like, it's not just mental health related. Like, there's a lot of physical health, like HIV and hepatitis C. And that's also very stigmatized. And
100%. Yeah.
There's, homelessness itself is just like a very stigmatized population because of, you know, the experiences that they have, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I like at the beginning how you said, like, basically everybody can be at risk of homelessness, because it's very true. Like, accidents happen, jobs get lost, you know, mental health, addictions. Like, there's so much that comes into play. Even in Canada, the fact that, like, our housing is super unaffordable.
Yeah. Even someone that has a decent job, like, it's so hard to afford anything. I don't know how it is in Regina, but in Calgary, it is so expensive.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and they kind of say that you should only spend 30% of your income on housing. And that's not the case for, like, basically anybody.
No, I definitely spend more than that on my house.
Yeah. So, yeah, just stuff like that, where, like, housing is just, like, kind of not affordable for people. And, And there's so much to homelessness that can occur to people that people don't even think about.
Yeah. So if people want to know more, want to ask you more questions or reach out to you, can they do that? Or how do they do that?
They can.
What is the best way to contact you?
My work email probably would be ablythe@phoenixregina.com. I love when Tony was like, "Hey, you should talk about this," and I was like, "Oh, I'd be so excited if it reaches just one person to see that our program exists and that there are people there to help." And
absolutely. If you are helping even one person, then it's all worth it in the end, I think.
Yeah, I agree. No, it's I was pretty excited. I was like, I was so nervous. I was like, I've never talked on a podcast.
Well, I hope you're not nervous anymore. I think it was a great conversation.
Yeah, no, I thank you for letting me join and talk about something I'm so passionate about.
Well, thank you for joining me. I feel like so privileged to even like hear about your work and what you do, and I'm still like shocked at how amazing this sounds. And I'm so happy that you're able to come on and share it with me. So thank you.
Thank you. I feel like sometimes our programs don't get talked about as much.
Yeah.
Just because we're trying to do a lot of the background work, and so it's nice to share with people that, like, these programs exist, and, you know, there's people there to support everyone.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people, like, I guess once you become homeless, you have no access to any resources or right? Like, if you don't know that these programs exist before this happens to you, then they're so hard to find.
Yeah. No, the barriers are definitely difficult, especially during COVID when everything is kind of over the phone. Like a lot of people who are struggling with homelessness don't have access to phones or internet, or, like it's just, there are a lot of barriers in place. Even when we get clients on, like getting IDs. IDs is so hard because they don't have all the background stuff, like they don't have their birth certificate. They normally don't have a health card. They memorize these numbers, like they have great memories. But they don't actually have the physical copies. And like to get a birth certificate, you need to know so much information about like your parents, where they were from, where you were born, if people were adopted, especially like our Indigenous clients who have been part of the 60 scuba residential schools might not necessarily know that information. So to get a birth certificate is just difficult. And then you can't have ID without like photo ID without 2 pieces of ID. And it's just, the process is, and how do you get these things without a mailing address?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So, and to get on assistance, you need a mailing address as well, right? So it's just like lots of barriers for people to even start getting connected.
Wow. There's so many different layers to it all that
many.
People just don't think about it, but wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's why I sometimes struggle explaining my job, because I'm like, well, we do kind of everything, because people who have struggled with homelessness need everything.
Yeah. Wow. You're so multi-talented. This is crazy.
I mean, we also like send them out because we're not counselors or anything like that, so we send them to those kinds of supports. But it's definitely a team effort within our team, and then within the greater community as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Me too. Me too.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Feel free to reach out at any time. You can contact me on Instagram and Facebook at Stomp the Stigma YYC, and you can email me at stompthestigmayyc@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. And if you or someone you know would like to come on, I would love to have you. Share your story, speak your truth, and together we can stomp the stigma.